alternative history of knowledge, communication, and information studies that constitutes a laboring of communication. There is a subterranean stream of thought that might not comprise the essential reading in a course on the conceptual grounding of knowledge, but the work of people like Saint-Simon in the 18th century, of Marx, of course, in the 19th, of Thorsten Veblen, who bridges the 19th and the 20th centuries with his work on technological change in the scientific and knowledge sectors. In the post-World War II era, a group of scholars came together to actually do the empirical work to identify transformations in the modern economy generated by knowledge labor. These include Jean Forestier, Fritz Machlup, and Marc-Yuri Porel, who did the groundbreaking work on understanding shifts in the occupational structure of the US and other societies in the push to knowledge and informational labor. And finally, a trio of theorists, strange bedfellows indeed, who around the same time in the 1970s produced what I think is path-breaking work in our understanding of the broader conceptual significance of a laboring of communication. These include Daniel Bell, The Coming of Post-Industrial Society, several books by John Kenneth Galbraith, and perhaps most significantly, Harry Braverman's Labor and Monopoly Capital. The first in-depth Marxist analysis, published in 1973, of the contemporary knowledge workplace. Now, contemporary thinking about knowledge labor has advanced this story. And I can identify many people, but among them, some stand out among those who have pushed the story further. Ursula Hughes, as I mentioned, her work, The Making of a Cyberperiod. Dan Schiller, his book, Theorizing Communication. Christian Fuchs' work on Marx and ideology. Michael Denning, an American studies scholar in the United States, whose book, The Cultural Front, is perhaps the best knowledge and cultural worker history of the United States. Nick Dyer Rutherford, unfortunately, is here with us. His book, Cyber Marx, a critical analysis of Marxist theory as it applies to the use of knowledge by contemporary social movements. And then outside of the Western context, Kiran Michandani, an Indian scholar whose recent book on call center and IT sector work in India is absolutely first rate. And then in China, two very important scholars, Yu Han, whose 2011 book, Informational Labor in China, is important for understanding resistance movement, and Jacqueline Chuan Chu's Working Class Network Society hasn't gotten enough attention for understanding of the way workers in China are using ICTs to resist oppression and exploitation. In any event, these folks are pushing the story further. Their work has both a conceptual and a political significance. They not only drive us to examine the laboring of communication, but they lead us to ask a central question. And it's not one that certainly I and others have gotten from audiences after lectures about ICT, that is, Professor Mosco, what will be the next new thing? That is, new device, new machine, new product. Rather, the important question is, will knowledge, information, and communication workers of the world unite? Now, why focus on knowledge workers? I mean, certainly all workers are important, and knowledge is a component of all work. And I won't get into a detailed discussion of tensions in defining knowledge workers. Suffice it to say, I take an expansive view. I focus on knowledge workers in part because of their economic significance in the global economy, but also communication skills in their work and have used their communication skills to organize and resist, often successfully. And there are also implications here for praxis. Something that I will emphasize over and over again. Much of what we are discussing here today matters to the degree that we take this information and try to change the world. And as a knowledge worker, it's important for us, for me, to look at this self-reflexively, to see this work as not only the advance of a theoretical perspective, but as an opportunity to learn strategies and tactics for activism. Now, the focus of our research project has been on worker agency. There are many studies, I've carried out some of them myself, on what technology, the state, capitalism, are doing to workers. We've decided to focus on what workers are doing about it. How are they responding to the challenges posed by the great changes taking place in the global political economy? It's not easy to do this because there is a hegemonic view that labor, when it's not ignored, is merely a dependent variable. I've in fact given a version of this talk wearing dark glasses. Students appreciated a demonstration of the need to see differently in order to appreciate the importance of labor in our world today. Students don't often understand this, nor do they understand the importance of worker organizations in the world today. I set aside for my dark glasses, assuming this audience will appreciate that a counter view focusing on agency doesn't require theatrics. Let's move the familiar bad news out of the way. These haven't been the best of times for labor, especially in North America, where union membership is in decline. Again, a reason to take a global and internationalist perspective on this. And also to recognize the importance of organized labor. A recent study by two Harvard scholars empirically examining the relationship between the organizations of labor and income inequality in the United States noted that the decline of labor explains about a fifth to a third of the growth in inequality in the U.S. Why does inequality accelerate in the United States? The absence of a strong labor movement is one of the most significant explanatory variables. We've concentrated on labor's response to, most significantly, what we call trade union convergence, and relatedly internationalism, and outside the orbit of trade unions, and I think very importantly, the growth of social movement unionism. It's not always easy for workers to organize trade unions in this repressive world, and it's interesting to see how workers, particularly in the ICT field, are developing strategies to organize worker associations that don't require formal trade union status, but are nevertheless quite active and often successful even against the most powerful transnational businesses. Let me say a word about convergence, and this may go to Christian's request that I say something about critical communication theory. I'm not reluctant to make use of concepts in the mainstream and turn them against those who would use them as cornerstones of their mainstream work. Convergence is one of them. It provides a foundation for much of the techno-utopianism that tends to dominate our field. The focus tends to be on technological convergence. That is the development of technical workers, technical networks that will drive economic growth and create what I have elsewhere called a digital sublime. But convergence can also be used to describe developments in business, the increasing concentration of power in ever larger corporations. Convergence can be used to describe the coming together of technical skills, particularly in the ICT occupations. That is a convergence of labor processes that require people to learn not only how to write a good story, but how to work a camera, how to send it out digitally, how to present it in multiple forms. And finally, convergence can apply to trade unions themselves. And one of the things we've observed is taking advantage of convergence, worker organizations have built large structures that expand over the terrain of heretofore divided occupations, bringing together workers in print, broadcasting, telecommunications, computers, IT work, and the general electronic services field. Examples include the Communication Workers of America, one of the largest unions in the United States now, representing people who were part of divided unions in print, broadcasting, telecom, IT, and other fields. It's